grid systems, like really thin grid systems. But I've learned that you have to change a setting on your machine when you put the acetate in as opposed to paper. So once I did that, it corrected itself. So I want to pass that on to people if
Oh,
they,
thank you.
yeah, if they use the machine to make a negative by using the clear transparencies that they purchased, you have to make a setting, change the setting to go with a different kind of paper. So
Well, we'll be going over that in it. What we'll do is there's just a couple of things we had we went through all the questions and we had a number of questions that we thought we would answer. And then we have one or two things, and then we're going to leave it up to after we go through answering some questions that we had already been asked, we're going to go through the transparencies a little bit on how to get those tweaked, just like you said, Sandra. It's a little tricky. And then we're open to questions. Anything you want. We should be able to answer most anything on the cyanotype. So are you ready to get started, Margaret?
Yeah.
And I'm Carol.
I'm Margaret.
This is my sister, Margaret. And would you like to take it from here, Margaret? And then
Sure. I think we're just going to start with a couple of the big points that we hope we got them, but wasn't sure if we did. Did you want to do the difference between the basic and the advanced, or do you need to do that?
So one of the things that we weren't sure that we were clear about is the class that we had, or the demonstration, was to focus in on the basics of cyanotype printing. And we felt that for people who have never done the cyanotypes, the pre-treated paper is really the way to go, or fabric, or the way to go. And that way you can start learning how to
get a nice print.
And also let's say if you've done a whole sheet of paper and you've done it, now you're out like a, let's say 11 by 17 paper, whereas these are about a little, I think they're 8 by 10 size, and the 8.5 by 11, I think the fabric is. So they're, in the way of cost, I think they're about comparable. So the basic, what we see as a basic cyanotype printed is with pre-printed paper, or pre-treated paper. And then the advanced cyanotype printing is where you mix the two chemicals. So I know that Sandra, I think, had talked about that she had already mixed them and put them on. What we'd like to focus, at least for the majority, we'll answer those questions later on about the more advanced, but it's essentially the pre-treated is doing all the work for you. And if you're not one that you want, it's a little messier, and there's nothing deadly about the chemicals. They're eco-friendly and they're not poisonous or anything, but they're messy. So, but what we're teaching you, or what we showed in the demonstration, it doesn't really matter if you bought pre-treated paper or paper that is treated.
But you do.
You do. And that's the negatives. I'll get into that in a minute.
Oh, hang on, Carol. Carol, can you go back to your picture?
Yep.
Welcome. Okay. Back to you. Can you unshare, Carol? Or do you want me to do it? There we go.
All right.
So now we're back.
Okay, go ahead, Margaret.
Go ahead, Carol. Where the putting the chemicals on and letting the paper dry, then you're starting right where that pre-treated fabric starts. I mean, pre-treated materials start. Could be fabric or the paper. A lot of times with the chemicals, it's a little bit tricky, and it can be a lot of frustration. You don't even get to the fun of the cyanotype sometimes. You're a little bit overwhelmed. So that's the reason why we started with the basic part. And to anyway, so that's why we started right there. And do you want me to talk about what are you doing, Carol?
I wanted it. Okay, so you either have pre-treated paper or you're treating it yourself and it's dry. So we're now even. Then if you bought a kit, it came in a bag like this, whether you bought it from us or you bought it from the store. This is really important that you keep your papers in a bag. So for Ingrid and anyone else who have done them themselves, get a trash bag, and I cut it up and put tape around it. And you really want to make sure that like right now, I'm getting a lot of light in that's UV. Now it's not really strong, but it would expose my paper. So if I have this open, so this is key to make sure that your paper is fresh. And then the next thing is you had gotten, if you had bought the kit, and even if you didn't, sometimes you'll get a mailing, somebody gives you a card or something. If you don't have or you're out and about and you don't have a glass frame you want to use, I'm gonna switch to, I have a camera. So
you can share your screen.
So this is a plastic, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a plastic, it's a
cellophane envelope.
A cellophane envelope. So what I did is I used that book board here, my paper, and then put the items on top, slid it in. So this is really good for if you're doing this with children. And then they can take it out, just tape this securely. Now you've pressed this and you could take it out and expose it. So this is a really fantastic way to reuse those cellophane envelopes. So if you go ahead.
I'm sorry. What's really nice about this is something that you can have an object that's fairly thick, like fresh flowers, or even sometimes suppressed flowers are really thick. And you don't have to worry too much. You can just slide it in there and it does a very nice print. Very, very nice print.
Okay. So
all right. Do you want me to do the how to do the transparency layering since you did that?
Yes, you do the transparency and then I'll talk about the transparencies, how to do it.
Okay. 1 second. Let me get back to me. You lost me. I'm gonna add my pin. I'm gonna take you off the pin. I think we need a third person. And then, sorry that it takes so long. All right. So, oops, sorry about the shininess. There we go. Oops, you're seeing my desk, sir. What you're seeing here is this is ready to go. The transparency is the black in there. So I'm going to take it apart. What's important about the transparency is to make really good contact with the paper. So I have just a frame back. I add a little bit of foam. It's just a sheet of foam that has sticky on it. And that gives just enough cushioning that if I put something that's a little bit on the heavier side or thicker side, that it gives it a little cushioning that it won't break the glass. And then you add this is a cyanotype paper. And then the transparency. And I know a lot of you probably already know how to do this, but just in case, this is how I do it. And I get good prints. And then I actually lay this. So this was a stencil that you're going to be able to see whatever objects or flowers that I put in between. So if I was doing pressed flowers, I would put them on top of the transparency. the fresh flowers that are a little bit thicker and you kind of like the dimensional, that you get in a dimensional effect, you can put the flowers right on top of this. And then with the clips, just make sure that you don't have the clip into where the paper is. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? And I will change back to where I was. That was funny. Oh,
Okay, so I'm with the transparency to go over a little bit on the transparencies. So
hold on one sec, Carol. I need to pin you. There we go. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna show you first this, and I'll show this. This is just a transparency film, and I think those are on the Amazon. If you notice, the transparency has no
border.
like little paper. So how do I tell that this transparency, what side to print it on? So if you lightly blow on it, the side that you can see the air is the side that's the side that you want to print on. Another way is just lick your thumb or finger, press it, and the sticky side is the one that is the side for the transparency. Okay, I have an Epson printer, and sometimes when I go to print, it will not take my transparency. And I know I've done a lot of work with this, trying to get these transparencies to work. So one key is to take your just glue stick, go down the side, and then put a plain piece of paper. And so the paper side is the side that's not printed. On mine, the paper side would go up, but it depends on which way yours prints. So the way you can tell is if, I'm gonna switch cameras, but if you, hang on. If you print it on the wrong side, you can see that this is, I'll actually do this. It'll come right off. So I know that wasn't the correct side. So another type of transparency is,
Carol,
yes,
show them what happens when it's printed correctly and you drag your finger. It doesn't move.
oh yeah. So the next kind would be just your normal, you either get inkjet or laser transparency film. So that's another method of doing it, which is, this one is a Staples. So if you notice, I can do this and it doesn't come off. So what I did here is I took the photograph. This is like of a light fixture. So this is the color. This is the positive, and this is a negative. So one of the things when you're doing transparencies, you want to make sure that, okay, so what we want is this picture to have this light area here. So think, I transferred it from color to black and white, and then you invert it, or you use, it's called a negative app. And the reason why we didn't put a particular app is it's just something you got to figure out, each one with the different phone. So you put negative maker or negative photography. So this white area needs to be black. The black area, the sun does not come through. So any of it's showing up as blue in this, but any of these darker areas are going to be white, and any of the white areas are going to be blue.
Can you show? Go ahead.
So here's an example of what it looks like. So for this, here's a perfect example of when you have a design that you might like, instead of the negative, you might like the positive effect of it. So here's the original picture. And then here is what I would have called the negative. Remember, this was white and it turned black, and this was black and it turned white. So this would be your positive. This is using the negative to get the positive. I think what I'll do is I'll go on.
Can you do the one with the, Carol, you know what one I think might help you a little bit is the one where you did the face.
Okay, let me just finish up with this one in the way of papers. I mean, in the way of transparency. So the first one I showed you was this one here is the one from Amazon. And that I put, if I remembered, I touched it, and if it was sticky, that's the correct side you want printed. This was Staples, and it actually has a finish on it, one side smooth, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Again, if you're having problems getting it through the printer, take your glue stick, go along the edge, and then put it with a piece of paper, and it'll work like a charm. Someone had put in, you could use vellum, and you can. There's a product that you can get like at Michael's, and it's called inkjet translucent vellum. The translucent vellum gave a okay, so I'm sorry, I did all these samples. Okay, so the translucent vellum gave a really nice print. So you don't need those the expensive transparency film. This is just vellum, you know, like the wedding invitations. But this is more translucent than the second vellum. If you can see the difference there, there is a different, this one is more translucent. So this is called, it's just a regular vellum. You buy it at Staples. It's nice, but it has a milky texture, a milky consistency.
More opaque.
Yeah. So what happens is I expose this for about 10 minutes. Then I flipped it over and used the milky one for 10 minutes. And as you can see, it didn't come through. I did then put it for about 20 minutes and it came through. It probably could have even gone longer. So when you start getting prints like this, what this is an indication is you can add more time for your next, put it in the light a little more. Another thing I would say is that instead of using a whole sheet of paper like this, if you just cut these in strips and then expose it, and all you need it would be a little bit to give you an idea on how much time you need. But again, the color is the key to the time exposures. Okay, so another way, so that the one thing neat about the transparencies that are the more organic is this could be, you know, you can have it any direction. This doesn't look like necessarily a negative. This could give you a different look than this one. But if you're doing photographs of people, animals, and other things, I had taken our photograph of the Cyanotype sisters here. I turned it into black and white. And then I turned it into a negative, which is here. So I laid it, this paper is what I'm calling the blueprint paper. This is a paper you get from Amazon. It's kind of a lightweight, and that's another trick to use is make sure you use the little less expensive paper to just practice with. I laid it on top, and if you can see, here is the positive, and when I put it onto the paper, it turns negative. Here is the negative, and it turns positive when it's developed. So it's a little confusing, but
The opposite way.
so I just laid it on top. This was done for 5 minutes and it came out okay. You know, these were originally used. They're really funny because a lot of people use these. They were amateur photographers. And so they had all kinds of goofy pictures and things like your family, like when your family got together as a family picnic. They're doing all kinds of goofy pictures. Most of the time in the 1800s, the photographs were very stuffy and very formal. But in these blueprint pictures, they could develop these in a small little they could put a tent up and do it like for your family picnic or your wedding or something like that. They're really funny to look up. Oh, one of the last thing with the transparencies. Let me go back to my camera. You can when you change the picture to a negative, you can go into just a regular program that will adjust photos. And what you're looking for, here's the positive picture here. Now we put it into the negative here. And you notice this area, this is Margaret's face here. So this, right in this area, is actually light on the photograph. So what you're looking for is you want to adjust the contrast in your picture so that it is the dark, that you at least have 1 or 2 areas that are really dark, like black, and that you have at least touch of white areas. So you want to adjust the contrast so it's the high contrast. Another trick is you want to go in when you go to print this and you want to put it at your highest high quality printing, because what happens is this isn't it's not covering it like as if you put a flower on top where it's stopping the light coming through. So to get those whites, you have to have a really, really dark black, and you want the highest quality. If you don't do that, it will it will give you like a little off shade. It's not going to ruin it. It's just, you know, not as good. And you can see here the difference between these two. This one on the left, you can see the high contrast. I've got a nice white, and I've got some really nice dark blues. Whereas on this one, I still have a really nice white, but I should have had it adjusted so I have a little more gradation. I should have had some darker blues in here so I don't lose everything on the side. So those are the main things with the transparencies that you want to look for. So high quality printing, make sure you have high contrast, and I would just look in the way of developing it, just look for that color change from the light blue to the kind of gray color. Oh, and the other thing is when you do the transparencies, you want to make sure you have this sandwich thing going on where you have your board and your glass, what Margaret explained, and it's secure. If the transparency slides at all, it will give you like like you
Double
end up with two eyebrows and things like that. But
And if it's not really tight to the paper, it'll give you a little bit of fuzziness. So
so anybody have any questions?
we're good on that. In the photo transfer. Wait a minute, in the photo transparency of you and Margaret, would it have left it longer to have a more richer? Yes, yes.
Are-
With the transparencies, show the cyanotype one, Carol. The
Oh.
paper.
The one thing I will say, I would have gotten whiter whites with the cyanotype if I didn't listen to my own advice. I really needed to tweak this a little more. In the camera, it looks as though it's pretty good, the black and white, but the contrast, I really needed to tweak this contrast better. That would be to get a better print.
Do you think leaving it out would have helped some?
No, because this is 10 minutes here. This one's 5 minutes. This one's 10 minutes.
5 minutes looks better.
Yeah. And then this is 7 minutes. So I wouldn't necessarily, and you can see it's not really a whole lot of change, but I would just watch it. I don't think in the way of exposure time out in the sun, I think these negatives, I wouldn't go too long with them because of the problem that those blacks are not opaque and the light could go through. It's probably better to keep it between 5 and 10 minutes.
You're still looking for it to go brown, but not like just as it turns brown, that brownish gray color.
But again, I could have gotten a better photograph. We were talking about this and I did this afternoon to show you the example. So I should have spent a little more time tweaking that. But that is what the solution to the problem is, higher contrast on the negative.
Okay. The question about the write-on transparency film in a package from, will that work in a package from Staples? The write-on film, you'd have to check to see if it has the coating on it. And that's what Carol was talking about when you breathe on it.
I don't think the write-on.
I don't think it does either.
But
I do that one.
I'm sorry.
But if you like Sharpie markers, there is some outstanding stuff that they're using that write-on transparency or clear bags. Gosh only knows what they're using. And they're taking the Sharpie marker and they're drawing on it and using that as the transparency. And it is stunning. It's giving the look of like a drawn picture, like a drawn line picture in the cyanotype. And it is stunning. It is stunning. Carol, do you have the name of the transparency that you purchased from Michael's? Do you have the picture and the name of it?
Oh, yeah. So that is the one from Michael's is found, it's called Swarthmore. Which is minute. Strathmore. S-T-R-A.
Strathmore, okay.
Yeah. And it's found in the, so what you would be looking for is, I would think any brand would work, but what you're looking is for translucent vellum.
And an inkjet. You do need the inkjet in there.
Yes, but you're looking for translucent vellum, and you're also looking for putting a sheet of paper behind it if it doesn't go through your machine. And it actually, I think Sandra was talking about this. Sometimes you may need to adjust because you might get lines across it, which I had gotten too. But if you put the paper behind it, it fools your machine and it says, hey, you just got a regular piece of paper in there. So it doesn't say this isn't correct and then does funny things with you. So that's a little tip. The getting back to the write on, I'm looking for it, but you can actually
Sorry.
you can actually draw using the Sharpie marker, like Margaret said, and draw on it and make your own transparency. It will turn out beautiful. So you can put your own drawings on. So if you wanted to with the transparencies, you could use your transparency and then put things on top of it, just like what we had shown on the demonstration for the silhouette book.
Okay, we have a couple questions here, Carol. Elizabeth suggested using the golden digital medium. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'd have to try. And you put that on the write on transparency, Carol.
Okay.
She suggested. I'm gonna have to try that because I think I have some of that sitting around. The inkjet or laser jet, it would depend on what your printer is. I usually just buy anything that says the inkjet because that's what I have. I'm always a little late, wary of the laser jet because that's a different type of ink. And I do think they make sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do make it specifically for laser. So it really depends on your printer. Let me see, hang on one second. And then the other question, Carol, is can you use a color photo negative or a black, or does it have to be only black and white? You used a color photo.
I did.
Use a real photo.
I think if you put it in a negative form, if you transfer your color photo, I haven't done this. Well, I actually did. So if you use, there's my color photo right there. And it actually turned out pretty well. So if you use your color photo and just turned it into the negative, I would think it would work all right. I mean, I don't see any
I think I'd use a little less time.
Right.
I would watch it is what I would.
And there's my picture. And there is so it came out okay. It doesn't look any different than this one here. So I don't see any reason why you couldn't why even bother putting it in as black and white. It's just going on the tonal the tonal change.
Okay. All right, Carol. There we go. We had a couple questions about, okay, that one's done. How long will the papers last once you have them treated? Okay. This one. 1 second. I'm putting my Pivo up. Okay. So when you treat, this is fabric. So the fabric turns a little bit, it depends on your fabric, it'll be lighter or darker, but this is a green shade. It's not showing green, but it's pretty green. So when they're fresh, they can be quite green. This is white paper underneath this, and that's about the color that let me see if I can get that. It's a little greener than this. It's almost a lime green color. And with the colored papers, it tones it a little bit. So the purple, because it's so strong, will come out more of a greeny purple, I guess. And then this is a blue. So that's more of like a blue-green. And then that lime green is, again, it's very pretty. It's a lime green paper with a lime on top. So it's pretty greeny looking. That's what it looks like new. when you let it sit a while, it can come
Hmm,
pretty blue looking. Now, these are not developed. None of these are developed. So all of these would be good to use if you had papers that are this color. These have just been sitting out on my desk. So they're not in direct sunlight or anything, but you can see that they're pretty blue, and this one goes almost to a gray color. What is oxidizing is that very top layer of the chemicals. When you expose it to light, the light will penetrate to that and will turn out having a pretty nice print. So the longer or the older the paper, the more of the bluer shades you're going to see. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. It can go almost to a brown, but when you start getting into that brownish, these are gray, but when you start getting into like a brownish, or it looks like it's exposed, it may still work. You just have to try it. It depends on how long it oxidized and how deep it oxidized onto the paper.
I have,
And then as for how long, I have had, if it's stored correctly, which is in a cool, dry place that's in a black bag of some sort, and if you have larger pieces of paper, those are heavy duty trash bags work great. I do large sheets of paper and I put them in what do you call them? The folders that they do for science experiments. I put them in there and then I put them in a bag so they don't bend. That's all.
and-
But they can last a couple months to a couple years if they're nicely stored. I have some really old paper from, I don't know, I found, and it worked. It just didn't work as well, is what I would say.
so I would agree. So the takeaway with this is make sure you keep them in a black bag, and you could even double bag them. If you have paper in this, you could even put them in another one and then put it in a closet to store it. I've been using the paper for a long time, and I know I have paper that is probably 5 or 7, 8 years old, and I kept it in the bag. I kept it sealed, and I do think the air getting at it will make it turn that color that Margaret's talking about, that kind of grayish. So make sure that that bag is really sealed, you know, press it, make sure it's really sealed. You could put it in another bag or just put it inside a closet where there's no light, and it should last. Like Margaret said, the older it is, it may not it may not give you a perfect, you know, as good a print as a brand new sheet of the newly prepared paper, but I've had really good luck with even the older paper. I will say some of the paper, and if you wouldn't mind, Margaret, I'll answer the question about what someone asked about what kind of paper. What
Yeah,
are the best papers to use?
Well, we're going to do that in the, well, she'll talk a little bit about it now, but we'll also do that in a more extensive version in the advanced part. But go ahead.
I'm thinking just for the pre-treated paper. So if you have the pre-treated paper, the one group of papers are what we call blueprint. And those blueprint papers do not give you the same intensity of blue, or that Prussian blue color. Like that, you can actually see it here. Anyway, you can see the difference. I'm going to put it down on with my camera. So those papers that are purchased online, almost, or on Amazon, are almost always the blueprint paper. Blueprint paper is one-sided, and it's kind of I don't know, maybe a 25-pound paper. So you could use this inside for like
And
signature
sheet.
covers. You could actually, you know, it's a nice weight paper. So that's one type of paper. And then another is, and we included these in our kit so that you had a selection to try them out. This is a heavier weight paper, and it makes a fantastic cover weight. And you can see the difference between the lightweight and the cover. You're going to get a really intense blue. You will not get this color blue with the blueprint paper. And then the fabric, there's two different types of fabric that someone had mentioned about jacquard. Jacquard has a sheen to it, and it's called sateen. So it has a little touch of shininess. And then the type of fabric that we had gotten for the kit is just a plain cotton, and that works really well. So those are a little example of different papers. And when we're preparing an advanced class, and we can go over all the types of papers used for that.
Okay. We just have a couple things, Carol.
Oh, and somebody had said if there's you're using chemicals on a special paper, do you leave it out to dry, or does it need a room to be dark? My suggestion would be to have it like I have a bathroom that I shut the shades, and you can leave it in there to get it drying. If you're doing like fabric, I laid it over the shower curtain, and then that way I'm not getting a lot of light in. And once there's even the little bit, it will only develop in a certain range of UV light. So even on an overcast day, there's a little bit of UV, and it does make it, you know, it will affect your paper. So the more you can keep it out of the sunlight, the better off you are. But the drying issue, when you mix your own, you just want to make sure that you keep it in a dark room. And then immediately, once it's dry, you can lightly fold it up and put it into the black plastic bag, and then you're good to go. Another thing you can do with any of the pre-treated or not, you could, if it's got a crease in it, you can lightly, just be careful to have a very dry iron. But if you're using the fabric, you can take a warm iron and iron it out a little bit to get the creases out.
And you want to put a piece of paper on top.
Yes.
Because the heat will slightly oxidize it. Okay.
Do you want to?
I think Ruth, you're going to have to, it really is testing your own paper to see if putting them in water will, Ruth asked if she makes her own paper, can she do, you know, the cyanotype with it? Yes, if it'll hold up underwater. Like some of the washi paper falls apart in water. So it wouldn't be a good choice because of the processing of the product. I mean, processing of the papers. Let's see.
After it's exposed, you put it in like a tray or some kind of, I just use like a little tray. You put the water on it and running water. It's usually, depending on how thick the paper is, because the paper will absorb chemicals and things, like the heavyweight, this heavyweight cyanotype store paper is heavier. So it's going to take a little more washing out. This paper, you've got to be a little more careful, because when you go to wash it out, it's thinner, and you don't want to rub at it because it'll actually bead up on you. So you got to have a piece of paper that will withstand between 5 and 10 minutes going back, being rinsed out in the water. So if you're, so what you would do is before you even do anything with it, put it in the water, just a little piece of it, and swish it back and forth and see how much it can handle without falling apart.
Okay, can I
Yes.
make a suggestion? If you're doing the chemicals, even before you start, have a lot of drop cloths. Anything that is absorbent, anything, your tables, your furniture, your hands, the grout in your bathroom. If it gets the chemicals on it and then gets exposed to light, you will have a blue spot, and it's pretty permanent. So, that's just a technical thing.
Someone had mentioned, let's see, Ruth had mentioned about using watercolor paper. You can.
It's
and,
lovely.
that will work out really. That's what they usually
Cyanotype.
suggest.
And
and,
it can be either kind.
And Therese had mentioned about she's a botanist and finds science fascinating. This is just it's just a fun project, and it's really great if you like collecting pressed plants and flowers and things like that. It makes an accurate print. Oh, one of the things is, if you notice back here, we were talking about in the transparencies that they get the gradation of color. These were pressed baby's breath, but if you notice that in these areas here, there's some light blue. So when I went to put them down, they weren't completely flat. And so that's where you get some gradation of color. So you can get a print that is actually blue and white, and that's it. Or you can get them with this gradation. So as this part of the plant was sitting probably, a millimeter up off of the paper, so you can get some really neat effects with this. So it doesn't need to be perfect. I will say this is not, every time you do this, it's fun. I guess it's like doing any kind of printing, like gel printing, or you can't really predict what will come about. Like the one like this transparency. I actually like the one that's the positive better than the one that's a negative. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay, we have a couple questions, Carol.
Okay.
If I only want to print on one side and the paper's treated on both sides, just do the one side. When you wash it out, it will be one-sided. If you want to print on both sides, you have to put the objects or flowers or whatever you're using on both sides and expose both sides. Otherwise, it'll wash out.
Yeah. And then Debbie mentioned sweatshirts and bedspreads and all kinds of things. You want to cover, and your nail beds will be
your cuticles turn blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
with the we had a question about, do the fabrics, she bought the jacquard material a couple years ago. Will the fabrics take longer? Basically, I would say no. They take a little bit longer, but not a lot. The difference is if you put anything on top like glass or plastic or the transparencies, every layer that the sun has to go through is going to take a little bit extra time. So if you're just laying like washers that are heavy and they're holding down the paper, they don't take too long at all. But as you start putting transparencies and layering it, it does take a little bit longer. And it's kind of one of those things you got to watch it or look at it and say, that looks, in the white parts, is that turning brown there or not quite yet? That's how I tell. Is I always have like a little bit of a very bright area, which will end up being bright blue, but a very bright or a clear area. And that's where I'm kind of looking to see if the color changed. So if I see the color change with the transparency and the glass and all, I then give it a few extra minutes just to be on the safe side. Just to let that sun get all the way through down to the paper.
Oh, a couple of things while you were talking, Margaret, that I thought of.
Mhm.
One of the things we have, Margaret's daughter is doing some of the cyanotypes, and she had asked she's doing it for her master's in art, and she goes, my cyanotype faded. So
Her
let's say
finished one.
her
Completely
finished
finished.
one faded. So this is a really weird thing about cyanotypes. It's permanent, it's eco-friendly, it has no, there's no chemicals that are harmful at all. But it will fade in the sun. But if you bring it inside, put it in the dark, it'll rejuvenate itself. So those first prints that were made in the 1840s, they keep without UV light. So they could be left inside the house out, but any UV light, if you even get some from the windows, will fade this. You bring it in and it'll rejuvenate it. So
Put
it's
it in a very dark space. It just takes a little bit. She has it under fluorescent lights, and I'm wondering if they don't have like a grow light in there.
Mhm.
Because the grow light will put off it won't be enough that you could expose anything under it, but it's enough if it's on all the time and it's hitting your lights. I mean, hitting your prints, that it will fade it slightly. So the answer to her is turn them around and pin them back up backwards until the show.
and
She pins them to the wall.
And another little trick that Margaret and I were talking about before we came on is, let's say you have you do your designing inside. So this is my design. I'm ready to go. I got the glass on there. Everything's ready. If you have more than a couple of steps when you're going outside, you might want to put like a plastic bag, a trash bag of a dark black one, and walk it out with it on top. If you're doing it where it's got, let's say, pliers and silverware and stuff that's heavy, and you're not using glass, you could still do the same thing. But if you feel like it's going to shift it, it's not that big of a deal. But by putting the black plastic on top, it'll save those whites for you. It'll keep it from exposing it quicker than it needs to be. The other thing is, when you're doing the exposure outside, so I have we're going to pretend this is glass. I've got my board, my paper, and my items. One of the things that's going to happen is, you can see the sun's coming through this way. If my sun is coming this way, I'm going to get some shadowing. If the sun is direct, I might not get any shadowing at all. If the sun is coming this way, I'm going to get some shadows on this side. It's not a big deal, but it will give you some really interesting effects. It'll give it a little bit of a 3D. So just kind of keep that in mind when you go out. When the sun is at the highest, you're going to get a nice direct print. And I'm going to say, even if the sun's coming from the side, if it is really close to the paper, you're going to get less of a shadow. But like with this, I have like little puffy parts of the flower. So I'm going to get some light shading behind it, which will cause this kind of different colors.
It makes it look 3D.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice effect, but just keep that in mind.
Okay, Carol, we have a couple more things, and then I think we're done.
You want to?
I'm not sure what Sarah is asking. She said, Sarah, can you unmute? And
This is a strange thing. I did a transfer onto a plastic piece of board. I did a photograph. Could I take that and put the fabric? Do you think that would, use it like a stencil? Would this come back out?
Hold on 1 second. Let me pin you so I can see what you got there. Is that pretty transparent?
Yeah, it's on clear plastic. I was
Oh,
experimenting.
yeah.
with
You
photograph.
could try it. Okay, the only question that I would have is what happens, that's a cyanotype, is that correct, or is that a photograph?
No, it's a photograph. It's
Okay,
almost like a transfer on plastic.
If it's a photograph, you should be able to. How clear and how sharp the image will be, I'm not sure.
Right.
The cat, it's a cat, right? The cat would probably show up as a negative though, because you have it as a photograph right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be the opposite. It'd show up as a negative. So
So
it would
the
work.
blue, the cat would turn blue and the fabric would be whitish.
Yeah, a white,
Um,
where the blue is would be white, where the white is would be blue.
Right,
And
so
the
the
cat-
dark areas turn white and the light areas turn blue. It's the opposite of what you think.
Mm. Yeah, if
So-
you have a lot of color, I mean, I guess that would be an experiment. Like this one's flowers.
Yeah,
Right.
that would give more of a gradation. So the
Yeah.
darker areas would just turn white and the light areas would turn blue.
Yeah,
So
I guess.
Sarah, one of the tricks with the one with the cat would be you could photograph it or scan it, turn it into a negative, and then
Go
do
back.
it that way.
Yeah, I figured I already had it on this clear plastic and maybe it would kind of be interesting because you said put it on plastic and maybe it would shoot through it. I mean, it would be.
I'm going to say that it'll probably take a little longer because it looks like it's a little thicker plastic.
Yeah,
So just keep an eye on the color change of the paper.
Right.
I would give it another 5 or 10 minutes longer than what you would normally do. And again, one of the things that I like to do is when my cyanotypes are done, I always scan them because then I could use them and reprint them. I could cut them up. Let's say I just love this so much, but I don't want to cut it up and make something out of it. So I just scan it and then I can print it on my printer and I can use it as signature covers or oh my God, I forgot the inside of the book.
And Carol, right behind you is a great example. That's Baby's Breath.
Yeah.
And her curtain is actually a printed shower curtain. So she took the cyanotype print, scanned it, and then had it made into a shower curtain.
oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
I had it made it into a mug.
Speaking of mugs,
That's good.
okay, we have a freebie, a gift for hanging in there. And let me pick the person. Hang on. It's random. It is very random. Okay. I have a little random maker. All right. Let me see who this is. 1, 2. Sandra Shipley. Woohoo! Sandra, if you don't, are you here still?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, excellent. If you don't mind, just emailing me your address, I will. Where are you?
There I am.
There you are. Wait a minute. Oh, there you are. I'm not very good at this. I'm just gonna say. Anyway, you get a little mug.
Oh,
Just-
how sweet. Thank you.
No,
How do
you're
I
very
get my
welcome.
email to you?
Pardon me?
How do I get my email to you
Oh,
right,
you
right
get,
now?
I sent you an email. How did you get here?
I got on, I use Zoom and I can do it
Oh.
right now in the chat.
You can do it in the chat.
You can do it in
as
the
a
chat,
private.
or if you hold on a second, I can send our email.
Okay, yeah.
If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, you know.
So I think it's about 7:30, Carol, so.
Okay.
We've got 2 more things I wanted to cover, and that's artcrossings@gmail.com. I'm sorry, Sandra, the reason why I ask is because I had sent out a bunch of emails today. So for people.
Okay, I don't have one. I'm sending you mine right now.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
On a chat in the chat.
That's perfect. I'll pick it up there. So in the when we did the vintage page designs or the book club, the two questions that we haven't covered, Carol, is the hydrogen peroxide. What the hydrogen peroxide does is it brings the cyanotype to full, it becomes fully developed. So you don't have to wait 2 or 3 days to get the strongest blue that you're going to get out of it. The nicer, I say nicer, but the blueprint paper doesn't make quite as dark of a blue as the ones that are treated with the chemicals, like the one from the Cyanotype store. She does all the work for you. And the hydrogen peroxide, you can spray it on. I have a little spray bottle that I spray it on full strength. You can add it to the water after you kind of rinse the water a couple times. You add it to the rinse water. That'll work too. You only need a couple drops of it. And then sorry, Sandra. You can just add it to the water, and then you do want to rinse that off. I don't think it really harms it too much, but it can, I think, fade the paper. Sorry, I'm just trying to do that. And then let's see the other one. The pressed flowers. This goes for any kind of objects or transparencies or whatever. You're using the pressed flowers because I guess somebody was using the pressed flowers for other projects. And you can use them and press them. And then they do not harm the objects. They won't harm the transparencies. Because the paper is dry, it won't do anything to it. If there's wetness down there, that's where there might be a problem with the transparency or whatever objects you're using. That being said, Carol, you said something about the condensation. That was one you wanted to talk about.
So if you are taking your glass, your paper, your objects, it has been so hot, and I'm sure the people out that are having the 110-degree temperature, what will happen is there might be some condensation between the glass and the objects and your paper. Don't worry about it. It should be fine. What's amazing is the print will take well with this cellophane. You can also use saran wrap. Like if these objects were too big to put a piece of glass on, you could take saran wrap and then tightly tape it on to the board, and that will work also. It's really surprising, so long that it is not casting a shadow, and it's translucent, it does a great job to be able to expose it. Do you want to, would anyone else like to have any questions? Oh, and in the way of fresh flowers, more translucent or dry,
The fresh flowers are definitely more translucent.
Yeah, but
because they still have the water, and the water, they still have a higher water content, and the light and the UV light penetrates through water better than dry materials.
And when it's more translucent, you're going to get more of this a tonal color of that Prussian blue color. Does anybody have any other questions or anything, or?
I think we're good.
And so will we be doing this on next Wednesday? I mean,
Not next Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays.
August 2nd at 6:30. And if you have any other questions, I know that a lot of you haven't tried it yet. So if you've tried it and then you end up with any difficulties, or you want to show what you've done, we'd love to see it.
Okay, that being said, we will, if you're welcome to come. If you are not on our mailing list, just go over to our website, artcrossings.com, and pop in there and I'll be sending the link out in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome.
You guys have a great evening.
All right, and thank you for coming. It was very pleasant.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed this.
And this is the first time we've done anything like this, so thank you so much for your patience.
Good
We
job.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I did it a while back. I forgot everything.
Yeah.
It's
You were
not bad
very
once you
good.
get going.
Well, we had, on our website, we have a little like variety kit, and that's a really fantastic thing to try it out. We actually contacted and worked it together so that was one of the things I'd like to do is, do I really want to invest in this? So we tried to get all different types of paper and the fabric so that you could try it out. So, and there's even a little transparency in there too, to try out. So
Much appreciated.
yeah, well, it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, we really have not, Margaret and I work together every day. And we are like little art buddies. So when we travel, we can do watercolor or painting,
sorts of
drawing,
stuff.
all kinds of stuff. So we work together on it. And so it's been a lot of fun. And like I said, thank you for your patience because we're brand new at doing this.
You were
doing
still
that-
very good.
not doing the artwork, but we're new at the Zoom.
Zoom.
You've done very well.
Thank you.
Thank
Pros
you.
by next time.
All right. We
So
look forward to
Wednesday,
it.
Wednesday, August 2nd at 6:30. And
Perfect.
if you have any questions or if you've done some, we'd love to see it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
What's your website? How do
Oh,
we get to your website?
right,
Artcrossings.com.
artcrossings.com.
Thank
Art-
you.
Oh, thank you all. It's a pleasure to
chat.
meet all of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thanks.